the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Parva. Section 119, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, after the death of that dear, King Pandu with his wives was deeply afflicted and wept bitterly. And he exclaimed, the wicked, even if born in virtuous families, deluded by their own passions, become overwhelmed with misery as the fruit of their own deeds. I have heard that my father, though begotten by Santanu of virtuous soul, was cut off while still a youth, only because he had become a slave to his lust. In the soil of that lustful king, the illustrious Rishi Krishna-Dwaipayana himself, of truthful speech, begot me, a son. Though I am of such a being, with my wicked heart wedded to vice, I am yet leading a wandering life in the woods in the chase of the deer. Oh, the very gods have forsaken me. I shall seek salvation now. The great impediment to salvation are the desire to beget children, and other concerns of the world. I shall now adopt the brahmacharya mode of life and follow in the imperishable wake of my father. I shall certainly bring my passions under complete control by severe ascetic penances. Forsaking my wives and other relatives and shaving my head, alone shall I wander over the earth, begging for my subsistence from each of these trees standing here. Forsaking every object of affection and aversion, and covering my body with dust, I shall make the shelter of trees or deserted houses my home. I shall never yield to the influence of sorrow or joy, and I shall regard slander and eulogy in the same light. I shall not seek benedictions or bows. I shall be at peace with all, and shall not accept gift. I shall not mock anybody, nor shall I knit my brows at anyone, but shall be ever cheerful and devoted to the good of all creatures. I shall not harm any of the four orders of life gifted with power of locomotion or otherwise, with oviparous and viviparous creatures and worms and vegetables, but on the other hand, preserve an equality of behavior towards all, as if they were my own children. Once a day shall I beg of 5 or 10 families at the most, and if I do not succeed in obtaining alms, I shall then go without food. I shall rather stint myself than beg more than once of the same person. If I do not obtain anything after completing my round of 7 or 10 houses, moved by covetousness, I shall not enlarge my round. Whether I obtain or fail to obtain alms, I shall be equally unmoved like a great ascetic one lopping off an arm of mine with a hatchet, and one smearing another arm with sandal paste, shall be regarded by me equally. I shall not wish prosperity to the one or misery to the other. I shall not be pleased with life, or displeased with death. I shall neither desire to live nor to die. Washing my heart of all sins, I shall certainly transcend those sacred rites productive of happiness, that men perform in auspicious moments, days, and periods. I shall also abstain from all acts of religion and profit, and also those that lead to the gratification of the senses. Freed from all sins and snares of the world, I shall be like the wind, subject to none. Following the path of fearlessness and bearing myself in this way, I shall at least lay down my life. Destitute of the power of begetting children, firmly adhering to the line of duty. I shall not certainly deviate therefrom in order to tread in the vile path of the world that is so full of misery. Whether respected or disrespected in the world, that man who from covetousness casteth on others a begging look, certainly behaveth like a dog. Destitute as I am of the power of procreation, I should not certainly, from desire of offspring, solicit others to give me children. Vasampayana continued. The king, having thus wept in sorrow, with a sigh looked at his two wives Kunti and Madri, and addressing them said, "Let the princes of Kosla, my mother, Vidura, the king with our friends, the venerable Satyavati, Bhishma, the priests our family, illustrious drinking Brahmanas of rigid vows and all elderly citizens depending on us be informed, after being prepared for it, that Pant hath retired into the woods to lead a life of asceticism." Hearing these words of their Lord who had set his heart on a life of asceticism in the woods, both Kunti and Madri addressed him in these upon leading proper words, "O bull of Bharata's race, there are many other modes of life which thou canst adopt and in which thou canst undergo the severest penances along with us, thy wedded wives, in which for the salvation of thy body, freedom from rebirth, thou mayest obtain heaven. We also, in the company of our Lord, and for his benefit, controlling our passions and bidding adieu to all luxuries, shall subject ourselves to the severest austerities. O King, O thou of great wisdom, if thou abandonest us, we shall then this very day truly depart from this world." Pandu replied, "If, indeed, this your resolve springeth from virtue, then with you both I shall follow the imperishable path of my fathers. Abandoning the luxuries of cities and towns, clad in barks of trees, and living on fruits and roots, I shall wander in deep woods, practicing the severest penances. Bathing morning and evening I shall perform the Homa. I shall reduce my body by eating very sparingly and shall wear rags and skins and knotted locks on my head. Exposing myself to heat and cold and disregarding hunger and thirsty I shall reduce my body by severe ascetic penances. I shall live in solitude and I shall give myself up to contemplation. I shall eat fruit ripe or green that I may find. I shall offer oblations to the Pitris, Mains, and the gods with speech, water and the fruits of the wilderness. I shall not see, far less harm, any of the denizens of the woods, or any of my relatives, or any of the residents of cities and towns. Until I lay down this body, I shall thus practice the severe ordinances of the Vanaprastha scriptures, always searching for severer ones that they may contain." Vasampayana continued. The Kuru king, having said this unto his wives, gave away to Brahmanas the big jewel in his diadem, his necklace of precious gold, his bracelets, his large earrings, his valuable robes and all the ornaments of his wives. Then summoning his attendants, he commended them, saying, "Return ye to Hastinapura and proclaim unto all that Pandu with his wives hath gone into the woods, foregoing wealth, desire, happiness, and even sexual appetite." Then those followers and attendants, hearing these and other soft words of the king, set up a low wail, uttering, "Oh, we are undone." Then with hot tears trickling down their cheeks they left the monarch and returned to Hastinapura with speed, carrying that wealth with them, that was to be distributed in charity. Then Dhritarashtra, that first of men, hearing from them everything that had happened in the woods, wept for his brother. He brooded over his affliction continually, little relishing the comfort of beds and seats and dishes. Meanwhile, the Kuru prince Pandu, after sending away his attendants, accompanied by his two wives and eating fruits and roots, went to the mountains of Nagsata. He next went to Chitraratha, and then crossed the Calcutta, and finally, crossing the Himamvat, he arrived at Gandhamdana. Protected by Mahabhutas, Siddhas, and great rishis, Pandu lived, O king, sometimes on level ground and sometimes on mountain slopes. He then journeyed on to the lake of Indradyumna, whence crossing the mountains of Hansakutta, he went to the mountain of 100 peaks, Satashringa, and there continued to practice ascetic austerities. Thus ends the 119th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 120, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, Pandu, possessed of great energy, then devoted himself to asceticism. Within a short time he became the favorite of the whole body of the Siddhas and Charanas residing there. And, O Bharata, devoted to the service of his spiritual masters, free from vanity, with mind under complete control and the passions fully subdued, the prince, becoming competent to enter heaven by his own energy, attained to great, ascetic, prowess. Some of the rishi would call him brother, some friend, while others cherished him as their son. And, O bull of Bharata's race, having acquired after a long time great ascetic merit coupled with complete singleness, Pandu became even like a Brahma though he was a Kshatriya by birth. On a certain day of the new moon, the great rishis of rigid vows assembled together, and desirous of beholding Brahman were on the point of starting on their expedition. Seeing them about to start, Pandu asked those ascetics, saying, Ye first of eloquent men, where shall we go? The rishis answered, There will be a great gathering today, in the abode of Brahman, of celestials, Rishis Pitris. Desirous of beholding the self-create, we shall go there today. Vasampayana continued, hearing this, Pandu rose up suddenly, desirous of visiting heaven along with the great rishis. Accompanied by his 2 wives, when he was on the point of following the rishis in the northerly direction from the mountain of 100 peaks, those ascetics addressed him saying, In our northward march, while gradually ascending the king of mountains, we have seen on its delightful breast many regions inaccessible to ordinary mortals, retreats also of the gods, Gandharvas and Apsaras, with palatial mansions by hundreds, clustering thick around and resounding with the sweet notes of celestial music, the gardens of Kuvara laid out on even and uneven grounds, banks of mighty rivers, and deep caverns. There are many regions also on those heights that are covered with perpetual snow and are utterly destitute of vegetable and animal existence. In some places the downpour of rain is so heavy that they are perfectly inaccessible and incapable of being utilized for habitation, not to speak of other animals. If even winged creatures cannot cross them, the only thing that can go there is air, and the only beings, Siddhas and great rishis. How shall these princesses ascend those heights of the king of mountains? Unaccustomed to pain, shall they not droop in affliction? Therefore, come not with us, O bull of Bharata's race. Pandu replied, Ye fortunate ones, it is said that for the sunless there is no admittance into heaven. I am sunless. In affliction I speak unto you. We whose wealth is asceticism, I am afflicted because I have not been able to discharge the debt I owe to my ancestors. It is certain that with the dissolution of this my body my ancestors perish. Men are born on this earth with 4 debts, viz., those due unto the deceased ancestors, the gods, the rishis, and other men. In justice these must be discharged. The wise have declared that no regions of bliss exist for them that neglect to pay these debts in due time. The gods are paid, gratified, by sacrifices, the rishis, by study, meditation, and asceticism, the deceased ancestors, by begetting children and offering the funeral cake, and, lastly, other men, by leading a humane and inoffensive life. I have justly discharged my obligations to the rishis, the gods, and other men. But those others than these three are sure to perish with the dissolution of my body. Ye ascetics, I am not yet freed from the debt I owe to my deceased ancestors. The best of men are born in this world to beget children for discharging that debt. I would ask you, should children be begotten in my soil, upon my wives, as I myself was begotten in the soil of my father by the eminent Rishi? The Rishis said, O king of virtuous soul, there is progeny in store for thee, that is sinless and blessed with good fortune and like unto the gods. We behold it all with our prophetic eyes. Therefore, O tiger among men, accomplish by your own acts that which destiny pointeth at. Men of intelligence, acting with deliberation, always obtain good fruits. It behoveth thee, therefore, O king, to exert thyself. The fruits thou wouldst obtain are distinctly visible. Thou wouldst really obtain accomplished and agreeable progeny. I. Vasampayana continued, hearing these words of the ascetics, Pandu, remembering the loss of his procreative powers owing to the curse of the deer, began to reflect deeply, and calling his wedded wife the excellent Kunti, unto him, he told her in private, strive thou to raise offspring at this time of distress. The wise expounders of the eternal religion declare that a son, O Kunti, is the cause of virtuous fame in the three worlds. It is said that sacrifices, charitable gifts, ascetic penances, and vows observed most carefully, do not confer religious merit on a sonless man. O thou of sweet smiles, knowing all this, I am certain that as I am sonless, I shall not obtain regions of true felicity. O timid one, wretch that I was and addicted to cruel deeds, as a consequence of the polluted life I led, my power of procreation hath been destroyed by the curse of the deer. The religious institutes mention 6 kinds of sons that are heirs and kinsmen, and 6 other kinds that are not heirs but kinsmen. I shall speak of them presently. O Pritha, listen to me. They are, first, the son begotten by one's own self upon his wedded wife, second, the son begotten upon one's wife by an accomplished person from motives of kindness, third, the son begotten upon one's wife by a person for pecuniary consideration, fourth, the son begotten upon the wife after the husband's death, fifth, the maiden-born son, sixth, the son born of an unchaste wife, seventh, the son given, eighth, the son bought for a consideration, ninth, the son self-given, tenth, the son received with a pregnant bride, LLTH, the brother's son, and 12th, the son begotten upon a wife of lower caste. On failure of offspring of a prior class, the mother should desire to have offspring of the next class. In times of distress, men solicit offspring from accomplished younger brothers. The self-born Manu hath said that men failing to have legitimate offspring of their own may have offspring begotten upon their wives by others, for sons confer the highest religious merit. Therefore, O Kunti, being destitute myself of the power of procreation, I command thee to raise good offspring through some person who is either equal or superior to me. O Kunti, listen to the history of the daughter of Saradandayana who was appointed by her lord to raise offspring. That warrior dame, when her monthly season arrived, bathed duly and in the night went out and waited on a spot where 4 roads met. She did not wait long when a Brahmana crowned with ascetic success came there. The daughter of Saradandayana solicited him for offspring. After pouring libations of clarified butter on the fire, in the performance of the sacrifice known by the name of Pungavna, she brought forth 3 sons that were mighty warriors, and of whom Durjay was the eldest, begotten upon her by that Brahmana. O thou of good fortune, do thou follow that warrior dame's example at my command, and speedily raise offspring out of the seed of some Brahmana, any of high ascetic merit. Thus ends the 120th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 121, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, thus addressed, Kunti replied unto her heroic lord, King Pandu, that bull amongst the Kurus, saying, O virtuous one, it behoveth thee not to say so unto me. I am, O thou lotus-eyed, thy wedded wife, devoted to thee. O Bharata of mighty arms, thyself shalt, in righteousness, beget upon me children endued with great energy. Then I shall ascend to heaven with thee, O Prince of Kuru's race, receive me in thy embrace for begetting children. I shall not certainly, even in imagination, accept any other man except thee in my embraces. What other man is there in this world superior to thee? O virtuous one, listen to this Puranic narrative that hath been, O thou of large eyes, heard by me, and that I shall presently narrate be. There was, in ancient times, a king in the race of Puru, known by the name of Vyushitasva. He was devoted to truth and virtue. Of virtuous soul and mighty arms, on one occasion, while he was performing a sacrifice, the gods with Indra and the great realm came to him, and Indra was so intoxicated with the soma juice he drank and the Brahmins with the large presents they received, that both the gods and the great Rahya began themselves to perform everything appertaining to that sacrifice of the illustrious royal sage. And thereupon Vyushitasva began to shine above all men like the sun appearing in double splendor after the season of frost is over, and the powerful Vyushitasva, who was endued with the strength of 10 elephants, very soon performed the horse sacrifice, overthrowing, O best of monarchs, all the kings of the east, the north, the west and the south, and exacted tributes from them all. There is a proverb, O best of the Kurus, that is sung by all reciters of the Purana, in connection with that first of all men, the illustrious Vyushitasva. Having conquered the whole earth up to the shores of the sea, Vyushitasva protected every class of his subjects as a father does his own begotten sons. Performing many great sacrifices, he gave away much wealth to the Brahmanas. After collecting unlimited jewels and precious stones, he made arrangements for performing still greater ones. And he performed also the Agniyathoma and other special Vedic sacrifices, extracting great quantities of soma juice. And, O king, Vyushitasva had for his dear wife, Vadra, the daughter of Kakshivat, unrivaled for beauty on earth. And it hath been heard by us that the couple loved each other deeply. King Vyushitasva was seldom separated from his wife. Sexual excess, however, brought on an attack of typhus, and the king died within a few days, sinking like the sun in his glory. Then Vadra, his beautiful queen, was plunged into woe, and as she was sonless, O tiger among men, she wept in great affliction. Listen to me, O king, as I narrate to you all that Vadra said with bitter tears trickling down her cheeks. O virtuous one, she said, women serve no purpose when their husbands are dead. She who liveth after her husband is dead, drageth on a miserable existence that can hardly be called life. O bull of the Kshatriya order, death is a blessing to women without husbands, I wish to follow the way thou hast gone. Be kind and take me with thee. I in thy absence, I am unable to bear life even for a moment. Be kind to me, O king, and take me hence pretty soon. O tiger among men, I shall follow thee over the even and uneven ground. Thou hast gone away, O Lord, never to return. I shall follow thee, O king, as thy own shadow. I, O tiger among men, I will obey thee, as thy slave, and will ever do what is agreeable to thee and what is for thy good. O thou of eyes like lotus petals, without thee, from this day, mental agonies will overwhelm me and eat into my heart. Wretch that I am, some loving couple had doubtless been separated by me in a former life, for which, in this life, I am made to suffer the pangs of separation from thee. O king, that wretched woman who liveth even for a moment separated from her Lord, liveth in woe and suffereth the pangs of hell even here. Some loving couple had doubtless been separated by me in a former life, for which sinful act I am suffering this torture arising from my separation from thee. O king, from this day I will lay myself down on a bed of kusa grass and abstain from every luxury, hoping to behold thee once more. O tiger among men, show thyself to me. O king, O Lord, command once more thy wretched and bitterly weeping wife plunged into woe. Kunti continued, it was thus, O Pandu, that the beautiful Vadra wept over the death of her lord, and the weeping Vadra clasped in her arms the corpse in the anguish of heart. Then she was addressed by an incorporeal voice in these words, rise up, O Vadra, and leave this place. O thou of sweet smiles, I grant thee this boon. I will beget offspring upon thee. Lie thou down with me on thy own bed, after the catamenial bath, on the night of the 8th or the 14th day of the moon. Thus addressed by the incorporeal voice, the chaste Vadra did, as she was directed, for obtaining offspring. And, O bull of the Bharatas, the corpse of her husband begat upon her 7 children viz. 3 Salvas and 4 Madras. O bull of the Bharatas, do thou also beget offspring upon me, like the illustrious Vyushitas, in the exercise of that ascetic power which thou possessest. Thus ends the 121st section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 122, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, thus addressed by his loving wife, King Pandu, well acquainted with all rules of morality, replied in these words of virtuous import, O Kunti, what thou hast said is quite true. Vyushitas of old did even as thou hast said. Indeed he was equal unto the celestials themselves. But I shall now tell thee about the practices of Q indicated by illustrious rishis fully acquainted with every rule of morality. O thou of handsome face and sweet smiles, women formerly were not immured within houses and dependent on husbands and other relatives. They used to go about freely, enjoying themselves as best as they liked. O thou of excellent qualities, they did not then adhere to their husbands faithfully, and yet, O handsome one, they were not regarded sinful, for that was the sanctioned usage of the times. That very usage is followed to this day by birds and beasts without any exhibition of jealousy. That practice, sanctioned by precedent, is applauded by great riyahis. O thou of taper thighs, the practice is yet regarded with respect amongst the northern Kurus. Indeed, that usage, so lenient to women hath the sanction of antiquity. The present practice, however, of women's being confined to one husband for life, hath been established but lately. I shall tell thee in detail who established it and why. It hath been heard by us that there was a great Rishi of the name of Uddalaka, who had a son named Svetketu, who also was an ascetic of merit. O thou of eyes like lotus petals, the present virtuous practice hath been established by that Svetketu from anger. Hear thou the reason. One day, in the presence of Svetketu's father, a Brahmana came and catching Svetketu's mother by the hand, told her, "Don't let us go." Beholding his mother seized by the hand and taken away apparently by force, the son was greatly moved by wrath. Seeing his son indignant, Uddalaka addressed him and said, "Be not angry, O son. This is the practice sanctioned by antiquity. The women of all orders in this world are free, O son. Men in this matter, as regards their respective orders, act asking the Riti's son Svetketu, however, disapproved of the usage and established in the world the present practice as regards men and women. It hath been heard by us, O thou of great virtue, that the existing practice dates from that period among human beings but not among beings of other classes. Accordingly, since the establishment of the present usage, it is sinful for women not to adhere to their husbands. Women transgressing the limits assigned by the Riti became guilty of slaying the embryo, and men, too, violating a chaste and loving wife who hath from her maidenhood observed the vow of purity, became guilty of the same sin. The woman also who, being commanded by her husband to raise offspring, refuses to do his bidding, becomes equally sinful. Thus, O timid one, was the existing usage established of old by Svetketu, the son of Uddalaka, in defiance of antiquity. O thou of taper thighs, it hath also been heard by us that Madhyanti, the wife of Soitsa, commanded by her husband to raise offspring, went unto Rishi Vasistha. And on going in unto him, the handsome Madhyanti obtained a son named Asmeka. She did this, moved by the desire of doing good to her husband. O thou of lotus eyes, thou knowest, O timid girl, how we ourselves, for the perpetuation of the Kuru race, were begotten by Krishna-Dwaipayana. O faultless one, beholding all these precedents, it behoveth thee to do my bidding, which is not inconsistent with virtue. O princess, who is devoted to her husband, it hath also been said by those acquainted with the rules of morality that a wife, when her monthly season cometh, must ever seek her husband, though at other times she deserveth liberty. The wise have declared this to be the ancient practice. But, be the act sinful or sinless, those acquainted with the Vedas have declared that it is the duty of wives to do what their husbands bid them do. Especially, O thou of faultless feature, I, who am deprived of the power of procreation, having yet become desirous of beholding offspring, deserve the more to be obeyed by thee. O amiable one, joining my palms furnished with rosy fingers, and making of them a cup as of lotus leaves, I placed them on my head to propitiate thee. O thou of fair look, it behoveth thee to raise offspring, at my command, through some Brahmana possessed of high ascetic merit. For them, owing to thee, O thou of fair hips, I may go the way that is reserved for those that are blessed with children. Vasampayana continued, thus addressed by Pandu, that subjugator of hostile cities, the handsome Kunti, ever attentive to what was agreeable and beneficial to her lord, then replied unto him, saying, In my girlhood, O Lord, I was in my father's house engaged in attending upon all guests. I used to wait respectfully upon Brahmanas of rigid vows and great ascetic merit. One day I gratified with my attentions that Brahmana whom people call Durvasas, of mind under full control and possessing knowledge of all the mysteries of religion. Pleased with my services, that Brahmana gave me a boon, in the form of a mantra, formula of invocation, for calling into my presence any one of the celestials I liked. And the Riti, addressing me, said, any one among the celestials whom thou callest by this, shall, O girl, approach thee and be obedient to thy will, whether he liketh it or not. And, O princess, thou shalt also have offspring through his grace. O Bharata, that Brahmana told me this when I lived in my father's house. The words uttered by the Brahmana can never be false. The time also hath come when they may yield fruit. Commanded by thee, O royal sage, I can by that mantra summon any of the celestials, so that we may have good children. O foremost of all truthful men, tell me which of the celestials I shall summon. Know that, as regards this matter, I wait your commands. Hearing this, Pandu replied, O handsome one, strive duly this very day to gratify our wishes. Fortunate one, summon thou the good of justice. He is most virtuous of the celestials. The God of justice and virtue will never be able to pollute us with sin. The world also, O beautiful princess, will then think that what we do can never be unholy. The son also that we shall obtain from him shall in virtue be certainly the foremost among the Kurus. Begotten by the God of justice and morality, he would never set his heart upon anything that is sinful or unholy. Therefore, O thou of sweet smiles, steadily keeping virtue before thy eyes, and duly observing holy vows, summon thou the God of justice and virtue by the help of thy solicitations and incantations. Vasampayana continued, then Kunti, that best of women, thus addressed by her lord, said, so be it. And bowing down to him and reverently circumambulating his person, she resolved to do his bidding. Thus ends the 122nd section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 123, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, O Janamejaya, when Gandhari's conception had been a full year old, it was then that Kunti summoned the eternal God of justice to obtain offspring from him. And she offered without loss of time, sacrifices unto the god and began to duly repeat the formula that Durvasas had imparted to her some time before. Then the god, overpowered by her incantations, arrived at the spot where Kunti was seated in his car resplendent as the sun day smiling. He asked, O Kunti, what am to I give thee? And Kunti too smiling in her turn, replied, thou must even give me offspring. Then the handsome Kunti was united, in intercourse, with the God of justice in his spiritual form and obtained from him a son devoted to the good of all creatures. And she brought forth his excellent child, who lived to acquire a great fame, at the 8th Muhurta called Abhijit, of the hour of noon of that very auspicious day of the 7th month, Kartika, viz. The 5th of the lighted fortnight, when the star Jeshta in conjunction with the moon was ascendant. And as soon as the child was born, an incorporeal voice, from the skies, said, this child shall be the best of men, the foremost of those that are virtuous. Endued with great prowess and truthful in speech, he shall certainly be the ruler of the earth. And this first child of Pandu shall be known by the name of Yudhishthira. Possessed of prowess and honesty of disposition, he shall be a famous king, known throughout the three worlds. Pandu, having obtained that virtuous son, again addressed his wife said, the wise have declared that a Kshatriya must be endued with physical strength, otherwise he is no Kshatriya. Therefore, ask thou for an offspring of superior strength. Thus commanded by her lord, Kunti then invoked Vayu. And the mighty god of wind, thus invoked, came unto her, riding upon a deer, and said, What, Kunti, am I to give thee? Tell me, what is in thy heart? Smiling in modesty, she told him, Give me, O best of celestials, a child endued with great strength and largeness of limbs and capable of humbling the pride of everybody. The god of wind thereupon begat upon her the child afterwards known as Bhima of mighty arms and fierce prowess. And upon the birth of that child endued with extraordinary strength, and incorporeal voice, O Bharata, as before, said, This child shall be the foremost of all endued with strength. I must tell you, O Bharata, of another wonderful event that occurred after the birth of Vrikodra, Bhima, while he fell from the lap of his mother upon the mountain breast. The violence of the fall broke into fragments the stone upon which he fell without his infant body being injured in the least. And he fell from his mother's lap because Kunti, frightened by a tiger, had risen up suddenly, unconscious of the child that lay asleep on her lap. And as she had risen, the infant, of body hard as the thunderbolt, falling down upon the mountain breast, broke into 100 fragments the rocky mass upon which he fell. And beholding this, Pandu wondered much. And it so happened that that very day on which Vrikodra was born, was also, O best of Bharatas, the birthday of Duryodhana who afterwards became the ruler of the whole earth. After the birth of Vrikodra, Pandu again began to think, How am I to obtain a very superior son who shall achieve worldwide fame? Everything in the world dependeth of destiny and exertion. But destiny can never be successful except by timely exertion. We have been heard it said that Indra is the chief of the gods. Indeed, he is endued with immeasurable might and energy and prowess and glory. Gratifying him with my asceticism, I shall obtain from him a son of great strength. Indeed, the son he giveth me must be superior to all and capable of vanquishing in battle all men and creatures other than men. I shall, therefore, practice the severest austerities, with heart, deed and speech. After this, the Kuru king Pandu, taking counsel with the great rishis, commanded Kunti to observe auspicious vow for 1 full year, while he himself commenced, O Bharata, to stand upon one leg from morning to evening, and practice other severe austerities with mind wrapped in meditation, for gratifying the Lord of the celestials. It was after a long time that Indra, gratified with such devotion, approached Pandu and, addressing him, said, I shall give thee, O king, a son who will be celebrated all over the 3 worlds and who will promote the welfare of Brahmanas, kin, and all honest men. The son I shall give thee will be the smiter of the wicked and the delight of friends and relatives. Foremost of all men, he will be an irresistible slayer of all foes. Thus addressed by Vasva, the king of celestials, the virtuous king of the Kuru race, well recollecting those words, said unto Kunti, O fortunate one, thy vow hath become successful. The Lord of the celestials hath been gratified, and is willing to give thee a son such as thou desirest, of superhuman achievements and great fame. He will be the oppressor of all enemies and possessed of great wisdom endued with a great soul, in splendor equal unto the sun invincible in battles, and of great achievements he will also be extremely handsome. O thou of fair hips and sweet smiles, the Lord of the celestials hath become graceful of the eye invoking him. Bring thou forth a child who will be the very home of all Kshatriya virtues. Vasampayana continued, the celebrated Kunti, thus addressed by her lord, invoked Sakra, the king of gods, who thereupon came unto her and begat him that was afterwards called Arjuna. And as soon as this child was born, an incorporeal voice, loud and deep as that of the clouds and filling the whole welkin, distinctly said, addressing Kunti in the hearing of every creature dwelling in that asylum, this child of thine, O Kunti, will be equal unto Kartavirya in energy and Shiva, one of the Hindu gods, in prowess. Invincible like Sakra himself, he will spread thy fame far and wide. As Vishnu, the youngest of Aditya's sons, had enhanced Aditya's joy, so shall this child enhance thy joy. Subjugating the Madras, the Kurus along with the Somakas, and the peoples of Chedi, Kashi and Karusha, he will maintain the prosperity of the Kurus. Surfeited with libations at the sacrifice of King Sweketu, Agni will derive great gratification from the fat of all creatures dwelling in the Kandava woods, to be burnt down, by the might of this one's arms. This mighty hero, vanquishing all the Afimihate monarchs of the earth, will, with his brothers perform 3 great sacrifices. In prowess, O Kunti, he will be even as Jamdagnya or Vishnu. The foremost of all men endued with prowess, he will achieve great fame. He will gratify in battle, by his heroism, Sankara, the god of gods, Mahadev, and will receive from him the great weapon named Pasupata. This thy son of mighty arms will also slay, at the command of Indra, those Daityas called the Nivatkavachas who are the enemies of the gods. He will also acquire all kinds of celestial weapons, and this bull among men will also retrieve the doctrined fortunes of his race. Kunti heard these extraordinary words, while lying in the room. And hearing those words uttered so loudly, the ascetics dwelling on mountain of 100 peaks, and the celestials with Indra sitting in their cars, became exceedingly glad. The sounds of the invisible drum filled the entire welkin. There were shouts of joy, and the whole region was covered with flowers showered down by invisible agents. The various tribes of celestials assembled together, began to offer their respectful adorations to the son of Pritha. The sons of Kadru, Nagas, the son of Vinta, the Kandavas, the lords of the creation, and the 7 great rishis, viz. Bharadwaja, Kasyapa, Gautama, Viswamitra, Jamdagni, Vasishtha, and the illustrious Atri who illumined the world of old when the sun was lost, all came there. And Marichi, Angiras, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Daksha the lord of creation, the Kandavas, and Apsaras, came there also. The various tribes of Apsaras, decked with celestial garlands and every ornament, and attired in fine robes, came there and danced in joy, chanting the praises of Vibhatsu, Arjuna. All around, the great rishis began to utter propitiatory formulas. And Tamburu accompanied by the Gandharvas began to sing in charming notes. And Bhimsena and Ugrasena, Anayus and Anoga, Gopeti and Dhritarashtra and Surya A.Nd were Chas the 8th, Yugpa and Trinpa, Krishna, Nandi, and Chitraratha, Kolasira the 13th, Parjanya the 14th, Kali the 15th, and Nada the 16th in this list, Sada, Varhadda, Vraibaka, Karala of great soul, Brahmacharin, Vahuguna, Suvarna of great fame, Viswavasu, Bhumanyu, Suchandra, Karu and the celebrated tribes of Haha and Huhu gifted with wonderful melody of voice, these celestial Gandharvas. O king, all went there. Many illustrious Apsara also of large eyes, decked with every ornament came there to dance and sing. and Anuchana and Anavadhya, Gunamukya and Gunvara, Adrika and Soma, Misreksi and Alamvuja, Marichi and Kuchika, Vidyatpurna and Tilottama and Amvika, Lakshmana, Kshema Devi, Ramba, Manorma, Ashita, Suvau, Supriya, Suvapu, Pundarika, Sugandha, Strasa, Promathini, Kamya and Sardavati, all danced there together. And Menka, Satjanya, Karnika, Punjikasthala, Ritisthala Gritachi, Viswachi, Purvachiti. The celebrated Amlocha, Pramlocha the 10th and Urvasi the 11th. These large-eyed dancing girls of heaven came there and sang in chorus. And Dhatri and Ayaman and Mitra and Varuna and Angasa, Ved and Indra, Vivaswat, Pushan, Testri and Perjanya or Vishnu, these 12 Adityas, and the Pravakas, came there to glorify Pandu's son. And, O king, Mrigavyadha, Serpa, the celebrated Niriti, Ajayikapta, Ahivradna, Pinakin, Dahana, Iswara, Kapalin, Sthanu and the illustrious Bhaga, these 11 Rudras, also came there. And the twin Aswins, the 8 Vasis, the mighty Maruts, the Viswadevas, and the Sadhyas, also came there, and Kakotka, Vasuki, Kakapa, Kunda and the great Naga Takshaka, these mighty and wrathful snakes possessed of high ascetic merit also came there. And Tarakshya, Arishtanemi, Garuda, Asitdhyaja, these and many other Nagas came there, so also Aruna and Aruni of Vinta's race also came there. And only great Bishis crowned with ascetic success and not others saw those celestials and other beings seated in their cars or waiting on the mountain peaks. Those best of Munis beholding that wonderful sight, became amazed, and their love and affection for the children of Pandu were in consequence enhanced. The celebrated Pandu, tempted by the desire of having more children, wished to speak again unto his wedded wife, for invoking some other god, but Kunti addressed him, saying, "The wise do not sanction a fourth delivery even in a season of distress. The woman having intercourse with 4 different men is called a Swerini, Henton, while she having intercourse with 5 becomes a harlot. Therefore, O learned one, as thou art well acquainted with the scripture on this subject, why dost thou, beguiled by desire of offspring, tell me so in seeming forgetfulness of the ordinance?" Thus ends the 123rd section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adiparva. Section 124, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, after the birth of Kunti's sons and also of the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, the daughter of the king of the Madras privately addressed Pandu, saying, O slayer of foes, I have no complaint even if thou beest unpropitious to me. I have, O sinless one, also no complaint that though by birth I am superior to Kunti, yet I am inferior to her in station. I do not grieve, O thou of Kuru's race, that Gandhari hath obtained 100 sons. This, however, is my great grief, that while I and Kunti are equal, I should be childless, while it should so chance that thou shouldst have offspring by Kunti alone. If the daughter of Kuntibhoja should so provide that I should have offspring, she would then be really doing me a great favor and benefiting thee likewise. She being my rival, I feel a delicacy in soliciting any favor of her. If thou beest, O king, propitiously disposed to me, then ask her to grant my desire. Hearing her, Pandu replied, O Madri, I do revolve this matter often in my own mind, but I have hitherto hesitated to tell thee anything, not knowing how thou wouldst receive it. Now that I know what your wishes are, I shall certainly strive after that end. I think that, asked by me, Kunti will not refuse. Vasampayana continued. After this, Pandu addressed Kunti in private, saying, O Kunti, grant me some more offspring for the expansion of my race and for the benefit of the world. O blessed one, provide thou that I myself, my ancestors, and thine also, may always have the funeral cake offered to us. O do what is beneficial to me, and grant me and the world what, indeed, is the best of benefits. O do what, indeed, may be difficult for thee, moved by the desire of achieving undying fame. Behold, Indra, even though he hath obtained the sovereignty of the celestials, doth yet, for fame alone, perform sacrifices. O handsome one, Brahmanas, well acquainted with the Vedas, and having achieved high ascetic merit, do yet, for fame alone, approach their spiritual masters with reverence. So also all royal sages and Brahmanas possessed of ascetic wealth have achieved, for fame only, the most difficult of ascetic feats. Therefore, O blameless one, rescue this Madri as by a raft, by granting her the means of obtaining offspring, and achieve thou imperishable fame by making her a mother of children. Thus addressed by her lord, Kunti readily yielded, and said unto Madri, Think thou, without loss of time, of some celestial, and thou shalt certainly obtain from him a child like unto him. Reflecting for a few moments, Madri thought of the twin Aswins, who coming unto her with speed begat upon her 2 sons that were twins named Nakula and Sahdeva, unrivaled on earth for personal beauty. And as soon as they were born, an incorporeal voice said, In energy and beauty these twins shall transcend even the twin Aswins themselves. Indeed possessed of great energy and beauty, they illumined the whole region. O king, after all the children were born, the rishi dwelling on the mountain of 100 peaks uttering blessings on them and affectionately performing the first rites of birth, bestowed appellations on them. The eldest of Kunti's children was called Yudhishthira, the second Bhimsena, and the third Arjuna, and of Madri's sons, the firstborn of the twins was called Nakula and the next Sahdeva. And those foremost sons of Kurus born at an interval of 1 year after one another, looked like an embodied period of 5 years. And King Pandu, beholding his children of celestial beauty and of superabundant energy, great strength and prowess, and of largeness of soul, rejoiced exceedingly. And the children became great favorites of the Rithis, as also of their wives, dwelling on the mountain of 100 peaks. Some time after, Pandu again requested Kunti on behalf of Madri. Addressed, O king, by her lord in private, Kunti replied, having given her the formula of invocation only once, she hath, O king, managed to obtain 2 sons. Have I not been thus deceived by her? I fear, O king, that she will soon surpass me in the number of her children. This, indeed, is the way of all wicked women. Fool that I was, I did not know that by invoking the twin gods I could obtain at one birth twin children. I beseech thee, O king, do not command me any further. Let this be the boon granted, by THCE, to me. Thus, O king, were born unto Pandu 5 sons who were begotten by celestials and were endued with great strength, and who all lived to achieve great fame and expand the Kuru race. Each bearing every auspicious mark on his person, handsome like Soma, proud as the lion, well skilled in the use of the bow, and of leonine tread, breast, heart, eyes, neck and prowess, those foremost of men, resembling the celestials themselves in might, began to grow up, and beholding them and their virtues growing with years, the great Riyahis dwelling on that snow-capped sacred mountain were filled with wonder. And the 5 Pandavas and the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, that propagator of the Kuru race, grew up rapidly like a cluster of lotuses in a lake. Thus ends the 124th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 125, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, beholding his 5 handsome sons growing up before him in that great forest on the charming mountain slope, Pandu felt the lost might of his arms revive once more. One day in the season of spring which maddens every creature, the king, accompanied by his wife, Madri, began to rove in the woods where every tree had put forth new blossoms. He beheld all around palsa and thilakas and mangoes and champaka and parihadrakas and karnikras, asokas and kesiras and atimukte and kuruvake with swarms of maddened bees sweetly humming about. And there were flowers of blossoming parijtas with the kokila, blackbird, pouring forth his melodies from under every twig, echoing with the sweet hums of the black bees. And he beheld also various other kinds of trees bent down with the weight of their flowers and fruits. And there were also many fine pools of water overgrown with 100 of fragrant lotuses. Beholding all these, Pandu felt the soft influence of desire. Roving like a celestial with a light heart amidst such scenery, Pandu was alone with his wife Madri in sarai transparent attire. And beholding the youthful Madri thus attired, the king's desire flamed up like a forest fire. And ill able to suppress his desire thus kindled at the sight of his wife, of eyes like lotus petals, he was completely overpowered. The king then seized her against her will, but Madri, trembling in fear, resisted him to the best of her might. Consumed by desire, he forgot everything about his misfortune. And, O thou of Kuru's race, unrestrained by the fear of the rishis, cursed and impelled by fate, the monarch, overpowered by passion, forcibly sought the embraces of Madri, as if he wished to put an end to his own life. His reason, thus beguiled by the great destroyer himself by intoxicating his senses, was itself lost with his life. And the Kuru king Pandu, of virtuous soul, thus succumbed to the inevitable influence of time, while united in intercourse with his wife. Then Madri, clasping the body of her senseless lord, began to weep aloud. And Kunti with her sons and the twins of Madri, hearing those cries of grief, came to the spot where the king lay in that state. Then, King Madri, addressing Kunti in a piteous voice, said, "Come hither alone, O Kunti, and let the children stay there." Hearing these words, Kunti, bidding the children stay, ran with speed, exclaiming, "Woe to me!" And beholding both Pandu and Madri lying prostrate on the ground, she went in grief and affliction, saying, "Of passions under complete control, this hero, O Madri, had all along been watched by me with care. How did he then, forgetting the rishis' curse, approach thee with enkindled desire? O Madri, this foremost of men should have been protected by thee. Why didst thou tempt him into solitude? Always melancholy at the thought of the rishis' curse, how came he to be merry with thee in solitude? O princess of Valhika, more fortunate than myself, thou art really to be envied, for thou hast seen the face of our Lord suffused with gladness and joy." Madri then replied, saying, "Revered sister, with tears in my eyes, I resisted the king, but he could not control himself, bent on as it were making the Rishi's curse true. Kunti then said, I am the elder of his wedded wives, the chief religious merit must be mine. Therefore, O Madri, prevent me not from achieving that which must be achieved. I must follow our Lord to the region by the dead. Rise up, O Madri, and yield me his body. Rear thou these children. Madri replied, saying, I do clasp our Lord yet, and have not allowed him to depart. Therefore, I shall follow him. My appetite hath not been appeased. Thou art my elder sister, O let me have thy sanction. This foremost one of the Bharata princes had approached me, desiring to have intercourse. His appetite satiated, shall I not follow him in the region of Yam to gratify him? O revered one, if I survive thee, it is certain I shall not be able to rear thy children as if they were mine. Will not sin touch me on that account. But, thou, O Kunti, shalt be able to bring my sons up as if they were thine. The king, in seeking me wishfully, hath gone to the region of spirits, therefore, my body should be burned with his. O revered sister, withhold not thy sanction to this which is agreeable to me. Thou wilt certainly bring up the children carefully. That, indeed, would be very agreeable to me. I have no other direction to give. Vasampayana continued, having said this, the daughter of the king of Madras, the wedded wife of Pandu, ascended the funeral pyre of her lord, that bull among men. Thus ends the 125th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 126, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, the godlike rishis, wise in counsels, beholding the death of Pandu, consulted with one another, and said, the virtuous and renowned King Pandu, abandoning both sovereignty and kingdom came hither for practicing ascetic austerities and resigned himself to the ascetics dwelling on this mountain. He hath hence ascended to heaven, leaving his wife and infant sons as a trust in our hands. Our duty now is to repair to his kingdom with these his offspring, his body and his wife. Vasampayana continued, then those godlike rishis of magnanimous hearts, and crowned with ascetic success, summoning one another, resolved to go to Hastinapura with Pandu's children ahead, desiring to place them in the hands of Bhishma and Dhritarashtra. The ascetics set out that very moment, taking with them those children and Kunti and the two dead bodies. And though unused to toil all her life, the affectionate Kunti now regarded as very short the really long journey she had to perform. Having arrived at Kurujangala within a short time, the illustrious Kunti presented herself at the principal gate. The ascetics then charged the porters to inform the king of their arrival. The men carried the message in a trice to the court. And the citizens of Hastinapura, hearing of the arrival of thousands of Charanas and Munis, were filled with wonder. And it was soon after Sunri said that they began to come out in numbers with their wives and children to behold those ascetics. Seated in all kinds of cars and conveyances by thousands, vast numbers of Kshatriyas with their wives, and Brahmanas with theirs, came out. And the concourse of Vaisyas and Sudras too was as large on the occasion. The vast assemblage was very peaceful, for every heart then was inclined to piety. And there also came out Bhishma, the son of Santanu and Somadeta or Valhika and the royal sage, Dhritarashtra, endued with the vision of knowledge and Vidura himself and the venerable Satyavati and the illustrious princes of Kosala and Gandhari accompanied by the other ladies of the royal household. And the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, decked with various ornaments, also came out. The Kauravas then, accompanied by their priest, saluted the rishis by lowering their heads, and took their seats before them. The citizens also saluting the ascetics and bowing down unto them with touching the ground, took their seats there. Then Bhishma, setting that vast concourse perfectly still, duly worshipped, O king, those ascetics by offering them water to wash their feet with and the customary arghya, and having done this, he spoke unto them about the sovereignty and the kingdom. Then the oldest of the ascetics, with matted locks on head and loins covered with animal skin, stood up, and with the concurrence of the other rishis, spoke as follows: Know ye all that possessor of the sovereignty of the Kurus, who was called King Pandu, had, after abandoning the pleasures of the world, repaired hence to dwell on the mountain of 100 peaks. He adopted the brahmacharya mode of life, but for some inscrutable purpose the gods have in view, this his eldest son, Yudhishthira, was born there, begotten by Dharma himself. Then that illustrious king obtained from Vayu this other son, the foremost of all mighty men, called Bhima. This other son, begotten upon Kunti by Indra, is Dhananjaya, whose achievements will humble all bowmen in the world. Look here again at these tigers among men, mighty in the use of the bow, the twin children begotten upon Madri by the twin Aswins. Leading in righteousness the life of a Vanaprastha in the woods, the illustrious Pandu hath thus revived the almost extinct line of his grandfather. The birth, growth, and Vedic studies of these children of Pandu will, no doubt, give you great pleasure. Steadily adhering to the path of the virtuous and the wise, and leaving behind him these children, Pandu departed hence 17 days ago. His wife Madri, beholding him placed in the funeral pyre and about to be consumed, herself ascended the same pyre, and sacrificing her life thus, hath gone with her lord to the region reserved for chaste wives. Accomplish now whatever rites should be performed for their benefit. These are the unburnt portions of their bodies. Here also are their children, these oppressors of forsweet their mother. Let these be now received with due honors. After the completion of the first rites in honor of the dead, let the virtuous Pandu, who had all along been the supporter of the dignity of the Kurus, have the first annual Shraddha, Sapindakarna, performed with a view to installing him formally among the peons. Vasampayana continued, the ascetics with Guhayakas having said this unto the Kurus, instantly disappeared in the very sight of the people. And beholding the rishis and the siddhyas thus vanish in their sight like vapory forms appearing and disappearing in the skies, the citizens filled with wonder returned to their homes. Thus ends the 126th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 127, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana continued, Dhritarashtra then said, O Vidura, celebrate the funeral ceremonies of that lion among kings viz. Pandu, and of Madri also, in right royal style. For the good of their souls, distribute cattle, cloths, gems and divers kinds of wealth, everyone receiving as much as he asketh for. Make arrangements also for Kunti's performing the last rites of Madri in such a style as pleaseth her. And let Madri's body be so carefully wrapped up that neither the sun nor Vayu, god of wind, may behold it. Lament not for the sinless Pandu. He was a worthy king and hath left behind him 5 heroic sons equal unto the celestials themselves. Vasampayana continued, then Vidura, O Bharata, saying, So be it, in consultation with Bhishma, fixed upon a sacred spot for the funeral rites of Pandu. The family priests went out of the city without loss of time, carrying with them the blazing sacred fire fed with clarified butter and rendered fragrant therewith. Then friends, relatives, and adherents, wrapping it up in cloth, decked the body of the monarch with the flowers of the season and sprinkled various excellent perfumes over it, and they also decked the heirs itself with garlands and rich hangings. Then placing the covered body of the king with that of his queen on that excellent bier decked out so brightly, they caused it to be carried on human shoulders, with the white umbrella of state held over the heirs with waving yak-tails and sounds of various musical instruments. The whole scene looked bright and grand. Hundreds of people began to distribute gems among the crowd on the occasion of the funeral rites of the king. At length some beautiful robes, and white umbrellas and larger yak-tails, were brought for the great deed. The priests clad in white walked in the van of the procession, pouring libations of clarified butter on the sacred fire blazing in an ornamental vessel. And Brahmanas, and Kshatriyas, and Vaisyas, and Sudras by thousands followed the deceased king, loudly wailing in these accents, "O Prince, where dost thou go, leaving us behind, and making us forlorn and wretched forever?" And Bhishma, and Vidura, and the Pandavas, also all wept aloud. At last they came to a romantic wood on the banks of the Ganges. There they laid down the hairs on which the truthful and lion-hearted prince and his spouse lay. Then they brought water in many golden vessels, washed the prince's body besmeared before with several kinds of fragrant paste, and again smeared it over with sandal paste. They then dressed it in a white dress made of national fabrics. And with the new suit on, the king seemed as if he was living and only sleeping on a costly bed. When the other funeral ceremonies also were finished in consonance with the directions of the priests, the Kauravas set fire to the dead bodies of the king and the queen, bringing lotuses, sandal paste, and other fragrant substances to the pyre. Then seeing the bodies aflame, Kausalya burst out, "Oh, my son," and fell down senseless on the ground. And seeing her down, the citizens and the inhabitants of the provinces began to wail from grief and affection for their king. And the birds of the air and the beasts of the field were touched by the lamentations of Kunti. And Bhishma, the son of Santanu, and the wise Vidura, and the others also that were there, became disconsolate. Thus weeping, Bhishma, Vidura, Dhritarashtra, the Pandavas and the Kuru ladies, all performed the watery ceremony of the king. And when all this over, the people, themselves filled with sorrow, began to console the bereaved sons of Pandu. And the Pandavas with their friends began to sleep on the ground. Seeing this, the Brahmanas and the other citizens also renounced their beds. Young and old, all the citizens grieved on account of the sons of King Pandu, and passed 12 days in mourning with the weeping Pandavas. Thus ends the 127th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 128, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, then Bhishma and Kunti with their friends celebrated the Shraddha of the deceased monarch, and offered the pind. And they feasted the Kauravas and thousands of Brahmanas, unto whom they also gave gems and lands. Then the citizens returned to Hastinapura with the sons of Pandu, now that they had been cleansed from the impurity incident to the demise of their father. All then fell to weeping for the departed king. It seemed as if they had lost one of their own kin. When the Shraddha had been celebrated in the manner mentioned above, the venerable Vyasa, seeing all the subjects sunk in grief, said one day to his mother Satyavati, "Mother, our days of happiness have gone by and days of calamity have succeeded. Sin beginneth to increase day by day. The world hath got old. The empire of the Kauravas will no longer endure because of ruin and oppression. Go thou then into the forest, and devote thyself to contemplation through yoga. Henceforth society will be filled with deceit and wrong. Good work will cease. Do not witness the annihilation of thy race, in thy old age." Acquiescing in the words of Vyasa, Satyavati entered the inner apartments and addressed her daughter-in-law, saying, "O Ambika, I hear that in consequence of the deeds of your grandsons, this Bharata dynasty and its subjects will perish. If thou permit, I would go to the forest with Kausalya, so grieved at the loss of her son. O king," saying this the queen, taking the permission of Bhishma also, went to the forest. And arriving there with her two daughters-in-law, she became engaged in profound contemplation, and in good time leaving her body ascended to heaven. Vasampayana continued, "Then the sons of King Pandu, having gone through all the purifying rites prescribed in the Vedas, began to grow up in princely style in the home of their father. Whenever they were engaged in play with the sons of Dhritarashtra, their superiority of strength became marked. In speed, in striking the objects aimed at, in consuming articles of food, and scattering dust, Bhimsena beat all the sons of Dhritarashtra. The son of the wine god pulled them by the hair and made them fight with one another, laughing all the while. And Vrikodra easily defeated those 101 children of great energy as if they were one instead of being 101. The second Pandav used to seize them by the hair, and throwing them down, to drag them along the earth. By this, some had their knees broken, some their heads, and some their shoulders. That youth, sometimes holding 10 of them, drowned them in water, and then of nearly dead. When the sons of Dhritarashtra got up to the boughs of a tree for plucking fruits, Bhima used to shake that tree, by striking it with his foot, so that down came the fruits and the fruit pluckers at the same time. In fact, those princes were no match for Bhima in pugilistic encounters, in speed, or in skill. Bhima used to make a display of his strength by thus tormenting them in childishness but not from malice. Seeing these wonderful exhibitions of the might of Bhima, the powerful Duryodhan, the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, began to conceive hostility towards him. And the wicked and unrighteous Duryodhan, through ignorance and ambition, prepared himself for an act of sin. He thought, there is no other individual who can compare with Bhima, the second son of Pandu, in point of prowess. I shall have to destroy him. By artifice. Singly, Bhima dares a century of us to the combat. Therefore, when he shall sleep in the garden, I shall throw him into the current of the Ganga. Afterwards, confining his eldest brother Yudhishthira and his younger Arjuna, I shall reign sole king without molestation. Determined thus, the wicked Duryodhan was ever on the watch to find out an opportunity for injuring Bhima. And, O Bharata, at length at a beautiful place called Pramnakoti on the banks of the Ganga, he built a palace decorated with hangings of broadcloth and other rich stuffs. And he built this palace for sporting in the water there, and filled it with all kinds of entertaining things and choice viands. Gay flags waved on the top of this mansion. The name of the house was the Water Sport House. Skillful cooks prepared various kinds of viands. When all was ready, the officers gave intimation to Duryodhan. Then the evil-minded prince said unto the Pandavas, "Let us all go to the banks of the Ganga graced with tress and crowned with flowers and sport there in the water." And upon Yudhishthira agreeing to this, the sons of Dhritarashtra, taking the Pandavas with them, mounted country-born elephants of great size and cars resembling towns, and left the metropolis. On arriving at the place, the princes dismissed their attendants, and surveying the beauty of the gardens and the groves, entered the palace, like lions entering their mountain caves. On entering they saw that the architects had handsomely plastered the walls and the ceilings, and that painters had painted them beautifully. The windows looked very graceful, and the artificial fountains were splendid. Here and there were tanks of pellucid water in which bloomed forests of lotusy. The banks were decked with various flowers whose fragrance filled the atmosphere. The Kauravas and the Pandavas sat down and began to enjoy the things provided for them. They became engaged in play and began to exchange morsels of food with one another. Meanwhile the wicked Duryodhana had mixed a powerful poison with a quantity of food, with the object of making away with Bhima. That wicked youth who had nectar in his tongue and a razor in his heart, rose at length, and in a friendly way fed Bhima largely with that poisoned food, and thinking himself lucky in having compassed his end, was exceedingly glad at heart. Then the sons of Dhritarashtra and Pandu together became cheerfully engaged in sporting in the water. Their sport having been finished, they dressed themselves in white habiliments, and decked themselves with various ornaments. Fatigued with play, they felt inclined in the evening to rest in the pleasure house belonging to the garden. Having made the other youths exercise in the waters, the powerful second Pandav was excessively fatigued, so that on rising from the water, he lay down on the ground. He was weary and under the influence of the poison, and the cool air served to spread the poison over all his frame, so that he lost his senses at once. Seeing this, Duryodhana bound him with cords of shrubs, and threw him into the water. The insensible son of Pandu sunk down till he reached the Naga kingdom. The Nagas, furnished with fangs containing virulent venom, bit him by thousands. The vegetable poison, mingled in the blood of the son of the wind god, was neutralized by the snake poison. The serpents had bitten all over his frame, except his chest, the skin of which was so tough that their fangs could not penetrate it. On regaining consciousness, the son of Kunti burst his bands and began to press the snakes down under the ground. A remnant fled for life, and going to their king Vasuki, represented, "O king of snakes, a man sunk under the water, bound in cords of shrubs, probably he had drunk poison. For when he fell amongst us, he was insensible. But when we began to bite him, he regained his senses, and bursting his fetters, commenced laying at us. May it please your majesty to inquire who is." Then Vasuki, in accordance with the prayer of the inferior Nagas, went to the place and saw Bhimsena of the serpents. There was one, named Aryak. He was the grandfather of the father of Kunti. The lord of serpents saw his relative and embraced him. Then, Vasuki, learning all, was pleased with Bhima, and said to Aryak with satisfaction, "How are we to please him? Let him have money and gems in profusion." On hearing the words of Vasuki, Aryak said, "O king of serpents, when your majesty is pleased with him, no need of wealth for him. Permit him to drink of Rakunda, nectar vessels, and thus acquire immeasurable strength. There is the strength of the 1,000 elephants in each one of those vessels. Let this prince drink as much as he can." The king of serpents gave his consent. And the serpents thereupon began auspicious rites. Then purifying himself carefully, Bhimsena facing the east began to drink nectar. At one breath, he quaffed of a whole vessel, and in this manner drained of 8 successive jars, till he was full. At length, the serpents prepared an excellent bed for him, on which he lay down at ease. Thus ends the 128th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.